Welcome to the world of visual effects. Today we will be exploring how to track a cardboard box and replace it with a sci-fi device. Imagine a world where anything is possible, a world where the lines between reality and fantasy are blurred. That's what we're about to create. Okay, so this is the box. This is what we're going to replace with our CG device. Few things on the box. So we're seeing markers all around because the blender needs 8 markers at any time, so I put plenty on them. There's 2 types. Some are drawn on, others are cutouts that are placed on there. It doesn't really matter. Markers can be any different shape. In fact, if you have some that just vary a lot more, it makes it easier for you, especially when you have a lot of motion blur, to just distinguish them, which one is which. If they all look the same, it can be tricky at times, especially when the device is relatively small in your screen. You want to have a bit of variety. Almost dropped this and then boom, explosion. Not quite. The other thing is green screen, green tape on here. This is what we're going to use to key out the hand, so I have a mask for my hand. In hindsight, this should have been all green, so I don't have to pay any attention if my finger accidentally slips over the edge here. Because then the key will not get the top of my thumb right now, right? This is then rotoscoping, and the same would apply if I'm going over markers as such. The key, we're not taking care of the tip of my thumb again. Rotoscoping, we want to avoid that. So pay attention. That is also why I cleared this area here of any markers, so that I can just grab it and the key will just do the thing, right? The next thing is over here, a cutout. That is where I put my light source in, because my device it emits light, and with this I'm actually getting a nice subtle, or maybe not so subtle right now, effect that really gels the visual effects with the live action side of things. Having glowy bits on it in the end, and actually having some illumination of my clothes and my body here, such a great hack to just sell the visual effect. And last thing, you've seen me doing this. This is not good, because there's no weight here. I can open the top here, put some books or other weights in there to just mimic roughly what I want the device to weigh, and I will definitely avoid these really fast and lightweight motions. You know, it handles different. You might have seen actors pretending to drink coffee, but their mug is empty. They're just like, there's no weight in there, and they're just chucking boiling hot coffee in there like nothing. You want to have a very good understanding of what your digital device will look like in terms of size, in terms of weight, and also if you have glowy bits on it, try to get some light sources that interact with the real life environment. Now, let's replace this ordinary box with something extraordinary. The first thing you want to do is go on the right hand side under the track panel, objects, and click the plus button to get object tracking. We don't want to track a camera, but the object. For a track like this with a lot of rotation and perspective changes, I have my trackers set to affine, so they stick nicer throughout without losing track that often. And you also notice that I start tracking from the middle of the shot. That is where my sweet spot is. I know this is the correct position for the tracker where I want it to be. And the hope is that it only has half the chance to cause errors, because it's only half the distance to the beginning, half the distance to the end. Now I'm tracking as many markers as I need. Remember, the blender needs at least 8 tracking markers at any time to create a solve. That is looking good right now, so let's hit solve button. Now if you want to see your tracking markers as a point cloud in your 3D viewport, which is I recommend, you either go on the left hand side on your tracking window and set up tracking scene, or you select your camera and then add a constrain camera solver to it. That way you can now add your 3D dummy box to the point cloud to line it up with your footage. If you want the box to move with your track, you also have to give that a constraint, but an object solver. And now you can really go through the entire range of the shot and line it up and also evaluate how your track looks like. I would make the box a little bigger than the shot footage, so that the original doesn't blink through. There was a little glitch here from one frame to the other where things happened. I animated the box to correct that, and that was that. Now I'm recreating the lighting situation that I had while I was shooting the plate. So we had a window on the left, which was practically just a door, and the garage door was open, so we put a massive light on the other side. bear with me here that I don't show you the kit bash of this. You see all the elements that are used for this environment on the bottom of the screen. It's not that good anyway. The important part here is the setup render layers. So I rendered out the background as its own, on its own, as a still, and then the foreground element that I'm holding in my hand here on its own as well as a layer, but as an image sequence. I'm just removing the volumetric fork here because we don't need that. Here I'm adding a dummy, a shadow catcher, so to say, that blocks out some light that is behind the device and also adds some shadow where my hand is holding the device. So for that I IK'd the foreground arm and then constrained that IK controller to my device so it moves with our camera solve. And then I just rotor animate where I move my hand to switch on the device so that we also have interactive shading there. In the end, I softened the shadow quite a bit because the difference between my hand and the 3D geometry was too big. So I moved that hand actually further away to create a softer shadow. So we just have a more subtle shadow than what we see here. It's just a bit too harsh. It would be too obvious that it doesn't line up. And this is the final result. It looks pretty good. So I say, let's do it together. Let's jump over to DaVinci Resolve. So you see two video tracks here. The one is my still image, the background, and the other one is my shot footage. If your FX library isn't open, go on the top left, click Effects, and search for 3D Keyer. Drag and drop that onto your footage. Now go on the top right, go Effects, and click the color picker. If you can't do anything, that is because on the viewer, on the bottom left, you see Open Effects Overlays needs to be activated. And now with your color picker, you can drag everything on the green screen or whatever color you want to pick. Let's activate Despill all the way and refine the key a bit. We adjust the Luma highlights a bit. But we need to add a bit more of that box green tape. So we're gonna matte finesse and adjust the black clip and the clean blackness so that we get as much green from that box. Now it's time to bring in our 3D element there. It's a little too big, so I will just scale it down a bit because I scaled on the background as well. So I'm pretty much just lining things up. The main thing we will do here is adjust its color settings. Because it comes in as EXR, we need to tell DaVinci what the correct interpretation is. So we go on the effects panel, look for color space transform, and drag it onto our rendered foreground element. Under effects on the top right, go to input gamma linear and output gamma RGB. And now our 3D element, our EXR sequence should look like we rendered it. Beautiful. Now it's time to adjust the colors a bit because everything is off, not just the exposure, also the color temperatures. So generally I'm selecting my plate first because it's way too bright. I bring down the exposure and we'll also adjust the contrast a little bit. So it's little tweaks here and there. We will cool down the highlights as well in a second. I think we quickly jump back to the keyer, the 3D keyer, and the garbage matte, select rectangle and bring in our garbage matte, invert it so that everything inside or outside of the matte is being deleted, so to say. So we don't have to worry about anything that is not part of the green screen. Now back to the colors, and we really just massage things into place now. Cool down the highlights a bit. Just play with the black levels a bit, so we just need a bit more punch in there. We do the same with the 3D device in the front of our hands, just lining things up really. With Alt S, you create a new node, and I added a glow effect to that node. I like to keep things a bit separate so that I can disable and enable them as I need. Also, if I want to reduce them, you just have to worry about that one node, not everything interacting with each other. Now the last thing that sticks out is that my foreground hand is actually behind my foreground device. We need to fix that by duplicating the plate, reset the 3D keyer, and select the hand, as well as some elements of the box which seem to be picked up by the keyer as well. Uncheck invert so that only the pixels that we selected are shown on top of the 3D device, and we're done. Thanks for watching. I hope this video has inspired you to add VFX to your next film. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Leave a comment if you have any questions. Tschüss.